What if the way you've been telling your life story reveals the secret to what is holding you back? Stories play an integral part in how we see not only ourselves, but the whole world. Stories are more than just an important part of communication. They also reveal hidden aspects of our inner talk, which can either support us or end up holding us back from the very things we want most in life, without us even realizing it. Join author, mindset coach, and award-winning singer-songwriter Carrie Rowan on her show, Look for the Good, every Monday at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. when she shares nuggets of wisdom from her internationally best-selling book, Tell a New Story, 5 Simple Steps to Release Your Negative Stories and Bring Joy to Your Life. Carrie's powerful stories and compelling guests will empower you to change how you look at your own life while giving you some powerful tools and tips you can use every day to help you feel better and move yourself closer to the life you've been longing to live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Look for the Good. I'm your host, Carrie Rowan, mindset strategist and life coach, and I just love sharing nuggets of wisdom about the stories that we tell each other, but more importantly, those stories we tell ourselves. And you can join me and my special guests as we share our personal stories of strength and triumph every week here on Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. You can listen online on your mobile device, in your car, or ask Alexa to play Dream Vision 7 Radio. And tune in every Monday at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. Eastern to get real stories and tips on how to turn your story and your life around. And evolve with us as we unite humankind with universal love. And I'm so excited to be here with you today, everybody. Welcome. Welcome again to Look for the Good. And we have Robyn waiting in the wings. Hello, Robyn.
Hello, everybody.
And we are going to have such an incredible conversation. You guys know I love talking about stories. One of my favorite kind of stories to talk about, besides the comeback story, is the love story, right? And everybody always they can have even a comeback story in love. And I love that. We have a lot of limiting beliefs, that just got imprinted in us before we were even 7 years old about what love is, what it means. We all have a different definition, right? I'm sure if you asked Robyn, she could give you 100,000 definitions that people have, what it is, what it means, what our expectations are. So behind that love story is a lot. There's so much sitting behind that love story. And when we can start to unravel that and see what's sitting behind there, stuff that was, handed to us unintentionally from our family of origin and everywhere else, any experience we ever had from like getting a Valentine in the 2nd grade makes an imprint on our love story, right?
Yes.
Right? Like the time I married this kid, I still remember his name, but I'm not going to say it. In like 3rd grade, right? These are all in the crevices of our minds and our memories, and they come out. All of our gunk comes out when we're in an intimate relationship. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the fact that we have those stories, figuring out what they are, identifying those stories can really, really save your love story to turn it into a happy ending story, right? Happily everly after. And one of the things I wanted to say too, before we get rolling into this conversation, is it's so important as we talk about this is an inside job. That love story starts with you first. It always starts there, right? And being able to have compassion and self-compassion for yourself as we're unraveling these stories is so important in this work, because you might find something that you don't like about yourself, or a story that you don't understand why you keep saying it, but you can't get over it. And when we can bring self-compassion to this kind of work, it really helps to open ourselves up, because this is an inside job, everybody. You can't look for somebody else to fill the piece. And once you really wrap your arms around that and look at your love story from a different light and look at that love story between you and you, life starts to get really juicy. So welcome again, Robyn. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I share your bio? I know it's always weird when someone reads your bio, but it's a great
You are
one.
so welcome to.
It's a great one. So Robyn Vogel is the founder of Come Back to Love and also the creator of Heal Your Heart. She's been doing this work for over 20 years now. Her passion, really her obsession, is to practice, know, and support others in truly healing, so that more of us can live with our hearts wide open. More of us can know the truth of who we really are, and more of us can share that love with others. I love that. It's really beautiful, Robyn.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. It's such an honor and pleasure to be here.
Yay, absolutely. I'm
Yay.
so excited to have you on, and you're dialing in from elsewhere today, which is always really a great feat, right? And I want to talk about your history because you have an incredible story. You were a therapist, like a practicing therapist. How did you make that shift? What caused you to make that shift and step into really this very specific niche of helping people expand their hearts?
Thank you for asking. Yes. So I think the answer to that question is kind of twofold. The first is yes, I was working as a psychotherapist, and I still do a little tiny bit of that work. Um, and I spent most of that part of my work life working with couples. And so I was already kind of honing in on relationship, intimacy, connection, sex, and all of that. And that came from my own life experience, which I can share about in a moment. And I want to add that working as a therapist for so many years and having training in internal family systems work and EMDR as a trauma modality and many other healing modalities, I learned a lot, and working with the couples is just so precious, mainly because you get to see like kind of miracles unfold and connections open and healing happen like right in front of my eyes, which I always treasure so much and I've always appreciated so much about that work. And in my own healing journey, I started to realize and probably started to see it a little bit in the work I was doing in my clinical practice that the psychotherapy piece is incredibly valuable and incredibly important. And it's not the whole picture. And I love that you started with, and part of your work is mindset and life coaching, because from my own healing experience, I got to a certain point with these kind of the emotional pieces and the emotional healing. But I realized once I stepped into doing some neuroplasticity work and practices, rewiring the brain,
Mhm.
that that was such a vital part of and is such a vital part of healing, because we can
Mhm.
do lots of emotional work, but our brains are pretty, they can get pretty locked into patterns and wired in a certain way. And actually, in whatever modality you use, but the neuroplasticity practices really help rewire and repattern the way that we perceive things in the world, the things we believe, choices we make, and more. So as soon as I realized that, I started kind of reimagining my work. And
Mm.
now I include more than just the emotional and the neuroplasticity, but those are two definitely, big pieces of the work that I do. And so I, transitioned over the years. I became a relationship coach 10 years ago and a sex coach. And I kind of transitioned my work into, I've been studying Tantra for years, um, which has been a big piece of sort of the undercurrent of the work that I
Yeah.
do. So it's sort of all transitioned into right now leading groups and retreats and workshops and classes all about healing the heart, but coming at it from a four-pronged approach instead of just focusing on the emotional.
I love that mind, body, spirit, right? You've brought it all in
Mm,
and using
yeah.
all the techniques as well, which is really where the change comes. And I love that you said that about the brain. I love to geek out on the brain stuff too, because that's really where it all starts. You can have a great idea and you can know something. The brain is great in that respect. But if you don't get that in the body too and start to, like you said, just really becoming aware, right? That it's so important for us to have that cognitive awareness of what's happening. What are our thoughts, right? And to be able to grab those and really take a look at it from an objective standpoint, which is really hard when you're in the middle of something that might hurt you or something, right? Something that feels bad emotionally.
For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So really learning to have that metacognition of observing your own self is always the start. That's why I started with the story work. So I love that.
Right.
Tell us your personal story, right? If you don't mind
Mm,
sharing.
sure. Not at all. where to start my personal story.
Well, the story
The thing,
go ahead
yes,
and launch it, but we
yes,
love talking about that turnaround story, right? The story
yes.
that hit us the hardest, the one, you know, when a client comes to you and they have this awful story that they can't share, and you're like, "Ooh, we're on the brink of a breakthrough here," right? With that story.
Totally.
Because
Yes,
inside that
yes.
awful worst story that is like covered in shame and it's just dripping with guilt
Mm,
and whatever other low vibe emotions is the turnaround, is where our superpower hides.
absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. Like I am the result of my story. And the story, the headline, would be a story of loss. It's a
Wow.
story of loss. When I
Mhm.
was really young, when I was 6 years old, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. And she died when I was 10 years old.
Oh.
And yeah, it's really, it's really sad and it's a really difficult story. And part of that story is more than just, which is something I always kind of knew over the years. Like I would be thinking, okay, like the issue is that my mother died, but I started to feel later on like, no, no, there's more pieces here that are at play. And one of them
Mm.
is that my parents didn't share with myself and my sister until right before my mother died. So there were 4 or 5 years there where there was a lot happening,
Mhm.
surgeries and treatments and all kinds of things, hospital
Mhm.
stays, and the kids were just sort of like ushered off and dropped off and not fully tended to, really. I mean, I know they were doing the best they could, but it was very difficult. So wrapped in there is like trust, right? And
Yeah.
being lied to, and things not being as they seem.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
That's a
And
big one.
so, yeah, so that's kind of where it all began. And then, very sadly, my father also got sick when he was in his 60s. My mother lived 38 years. My father lived about 62 years. They both died right around their birthdays, which is interesting.
So
Um,
interesting.
yeah, and I was 30, and so he died before I had my children. So he didn't meet my
Oh.
children, which for me is just because would just have been the most amazing grandfather. Like,
Mm.
so that
Yeah.
was that was really, really hard. And then, and then, um, there's a story in there about marriage and separation that relate to
Mhm.
my work very directly, of course.
Yeah.
Marriage, separation, divorce, and then a new partner that really was like, I believe we all have more than one beloved, and this partner was very deep beloved and played a very significant role in my life in terms of getting me on the right aligned path for why I'm here on the planet. I was doing very different work early on in my career. I was working as a nutritionist with eating disorders and things completely different than what I'm doing now.
Mhm.
And but that partner also died. So we were together for 5 years, and he got sick about 4 years in, died about 8 months later.
Oh my
So that
gosh, you're
was,
kidding.
yeah, I'm not. So he died in
Whoa.
2008, and now it's
Wow.
2024. So it's been many years. But yeah, it's a story of loss, and it's a story of incredible resilience. And it is a story of spending probably the first 20 years after my mother died just really mixed up and in a lot of pain and taking it out on myself. And I talked about eating disorders. I had like a pretty significant eating disorder all through my teen years and my early 20s.
Mhm.
And no surprise, it's where I put my grief, and it's where I put my distraction, among
Absolutely.
other
Mhm.
distractions. But it was just so, so painful. And my family didn't, like I said, didn't tell us what was happening, but they also then didn't address it once my mother died. It was kind of like, okay, that's complete. Let's move on. And it was like the
Whoa.
most terrifying experience. Yeah, it was really awful. And I was so
Yeah.
young, so,
So
so young,
young, so
so
impressionable,
young.
so young.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
exactly. So
That's
all the
heart-wrenching.
messages, like,
Mhm.
we might talk about all the things I took on that weren't true.
Yep.
Um, I just lived with all of those very intensely with a lot of anxiety and, like I said, the eating disorder until about my early 30s. And that's when I had an awakening and things started to shift. And so that, yeah, the story of resilience and the story of healing and coming back to love despite your circumstances is my big message, like to love no matter what.
You're giving me full
It's
body
one of
chills
my,
right now. Totally.
mm,
Like totally from my waist down and up. It's
mm,
like, but it's so, the way the whole thing unfolds, right? The way our story starts unfolding at that young age. And I'd love to know, and I know my listeners would love to know too, a little bit about your awakening. What caused you to have that awakening? You had so much that happened to you before that.
sure. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of us here and those listening, I'm sure, have had experiences where something kind of just comes into your life, into your energy field, and it's a surprise. And what happened for me was I was shifting careers, so I went back to school for counseling psychology and spent a lot of time in expressive arts. And so I was really opening up to different aspects of myself, doing a lot of art, a lot of meditation, spiritual practice. That all actually was part of the grad school program I chose. So that was amazing.
Ooh,
And I
love
was
that.
very clear about what I was choosing. Yeah, I looked at those courses and I thought, yes, that's where I want to put myself. I was married,
Mhm.
hadn't had a baby yet. And so that decision to land there opened up, really, that was the decision, now that I'm thinking about it
Wow.
here in this
Uh-huh.
moment, really is what
Wow.
opened up everything.
Really?
Because when I got there, I then was invited to participate in a year-long training, women's empowerment training for women, with an
Ooh.
incredible healer woman who created this container. She called it the Priestess Path Apprenticeship.
Ooh.
And as a Jewish woman, I was like, I don't really understand that word priestess. And that's okay. What happened was I was asked by 2 to 3 different people. And then, it's like, okay, universe is knocking on the door. Hello. Um, so I stepped into this very scary for me year-long program with a friend, thank God, thank goddess, thank priestess. And
Uh-huh.
we did things that were just absolutely, in my experience in those days, terrifying. We did fire walks and we did sweat lodges and we did shadow work. And we just went into the depth every weekend, 9 weekends
Mhm.
over the course of a year. My
Wow.
poor husband at the time, he would say, he told me later, actually, he never knew who was going to walk back in the door on a Sunday.
I
Just
love it.
never. Left Friday, one person, came back Sunday. He had to like prepare himself, like who was gonna show up, because I
That's
was changing and healing so much.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I
That's
have another little
powerful.
story of the awakening piece,
Yeah,
but
let's
just
hear
to
it.
say that container. Well,
Beautiful.
yeah, that container changed me. And that can change that. I don't want to say it changed me. It actually scraped off the parts that weren't me and brought
Yeah.
me to who I really am and why I'm here and what I'm doing here on the planet. And one of the things that I experienced that is interesting, because it happened right here in the place I am in right now, um, which is the place where I'm leading a retreat actually this weekend. But in this
The
very
irony
building
of
that I'm
that,
in,
right?
the
It's
irony of that,
full circle.
exactly.
I love that.
Yeah, yes. And I think, I want to say like 2001 or 2, so 25 years ago almost, I was sitting in a circle and the focus of the weekend was sexuality in our bodies. And I looked across the room at these women and they were like hugging each other and like, just like being so sweet and intimate and loving with each other. And I looked at them and I had a thought that I witnessed. And the thought was, that's not for me. I don't get to have that in my life. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is something I've been thinking for many years.
Mm.
And all through like elementary school and all the years of, junior high and high school, like I would look at other people having deep connections and I would know, quote unquote,
Mhm.
that's not for me. I don't get to have that in my life. I don't get to have that
Wow.
love. I don't get to
Wow.
have that intimacy. And then as I was sitting there looking at them, observing them, and noticing the thought, I said to myself, that's not true. Why do I think that? And I can't believe I've been holding that thought. And it just changed everything in
Wow.
that moment. Changed everything. because I really had been living with that belief that, my mother had left and love wasn't for me. You know, I wasn't the
Wow.
one who was going to receive that. And it was, it was friendships that
Yep.
those women were expressing, but they were deep and intimate
Yeah.
friendships.
Yeah, they were.
And it
Wow.
just, yeah, changed
Wow.
it all.
That is unbelievable. This is a perfect time to take a quick little break because this is so huge.
Great.
And I know everybody's hanging on your every word. We'll be right back with Robyn Vogel. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Look for the Good. We're having a fabulous conversation with Robyn. And I love what you were saying. You were talking about, what was that moment of enlightenment that caused you to take a real shift in your whole life? And I love the fact that you caught yourself, you caught yourself in that story midstream. And when we're open, that's what can happen. When we start to get that curious mindset, right? That's what can happen. These things that are going on in our subconscious so quietly all of a sudden can start to reveal themselves when we're aware. And I called it metacognition before. That's nothing more than just being aware of your thoughts and the way they make you feel and and then the next thing that happens is choice, right? Now we can
That's right.
choose, right? I realized this, just like you said, wait a minute, that's not true. I can have that. What happened next?
Thank you. What happened next was I went home, and as I said, my husband at the time, didn't know who was walking in the door. And the person who walked in the door that day was somebody really desiring deep intimacy and connection and vulnerability like we hadn't experienced before. There was a lot of vulnerability because that relationship was very healing for me in my 20s, for
Mhm.
sure. And I knew that there was a choice that we could make, that I could make, that would bring something different into the relationship, something more expansive, something more creative, and a deeper connection. And also in the realm of sex, I want to say, because I think before then our sex life was probably pretty traditional.
Mhm.
And I just got the feeling, and also I said that weekend was about sexuality and our bodies and healing. It just opened up other possibilities, not anything like, big and drastic and chaotic that has to change, but just more, I think for me, more personal expression, more
Mm.
communication, more openness to share about myself and my vulnerabilities that we all have and that I had. And yeah, so I was really ready and desiring very strongly that shift in our relationship.
And,
And so I brought that.
and he probably
What happened
liked
next?
he probably liked that weekend.
Yeah.
He probably liked a lot when you came back that weekend, like, "Honey, this is what I want." Right? He's like, "Ooh, go way more often."
Right.
I love that. And, it's that I think we all want in our lives, if you were to ask most people, right, deeper connections. We want that deeper connection. We're just not sure how to go about it, right? We're just not sure how to get that. Is it us? Is it them? Why do I keep attracting the same thing? You know, um,
Mm.
if you were to give someone a little bit of advice or insight, like how could they figure out what their little insidious story is that repeats over and over in their head, right? Like, how do they figure that out? How do they peel back those layers of the onion to figure out what is most important, like you did?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. It's certainly the cornerstone of the Heal Your Heart program that you mentioned, and where we start in the beginning. And the questions are, what patterns are you recognizing in your life? Like when you look at your past relationships, do you see any threads? What are the themes? Sometimes we'll do like a timeline to mark the different um, experiences that have happened in your life over the course of
Mm.
however many years, and then see what are the threads that are weaving through, what are the themes that are playing out, did they all end in a similar way, did the people you're in relationship with have some things in common that work for you and some things in common that don't work for you. So
Mm.
that's a place to start, to really start to notice. And most people at some point say something like, why do I keep repeating this pattern? So
Exactly.
as soon as
Why
you
do I
ask
keep
that
attracting
question,
all the wrong people, right?
why do I keep attracting the same kind of person? Right,
Yep.
exactly.
Yep.
And for me, it was at my early 20s that happened, that I started to notice, wait a minute, there's something happening here. And I took a pause at
Yeah.
that time. So yeah, so that's the first question would be,
Yeah.
uh, what's happening? What are these patterns? And then the question is, well, why? What
Mm,
in your past life, I don't mean past, well, it could be past lives, but also this current life in the past. What experiences, what challenges, what traumas, what situations contributed to bringing those experiences to you over and over again?
mhm.
And we always say that when something comes to you over and over again, that it's something, again, like universe knocking on the door, something wants your attention.
Yeah. I was going to say, pay
And
attention to me.
pay attention. Yes, exactly.
Red
Exactly.
flags. How many more do we have to get? If you don't pay attention, it's just going to get bigger and bigger and louder, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So
I love
I
that.
call it excavation work.
Ooh, that's really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've got a kind of a construction theme going on there. I'm not sure why, but we do this I call it a bridge meditation. So we bridge back to the past and then we do
Hmm.
some excavation work. And some of it is shamanic journeying. Like I said, my
Yeah.
work is, not straight
Yeah.
psychotherapy now. So we
I
do some
love that.
shamanic journeying, meet different parts of ourselves, different beings that are
Mm,
connected to ourselves,
hmm.
and learn more, like
Yeah.
why. And there's no right
Right.
answer, there's no wrong answer. It's just what comes.
I love that.
That's important.
It's so important. And it's that shadow work that we don't want to do, right? It's like looking at
Right.
ourselves and, I did a healer training program. We had it was a weekend long. It was a year long, but it was every weekend. And there was that shadow work, right? It was like, Debbie Ford and, you get on the bus
Yes.
with all the parts of yourself and all the
Yes.
things you
Yes.
can't
Yes.
stand and where you like that. It's hard. It is hard to look at and admit, but it's so powerful to do. So
It
powerful.
is so powerful to do. That is such powerful work and very challenging, like you said, because it's hard to see the shadows. I mean, we call it shadow for a reason,
Right.
you know.
It's
It's
hiding.
like we kind of want to keep those things in shadow over there. But
Right.
the problem is, or the issue is, those things that are in shadow are often, as we say, driving the bus. And so
Yes.
those shadow parts are making decisions and choices that aren't necessarily in alignment with our truest and highest divine selves.
Yeah. So
And
true.
that's painful. That's
It
painful.
is painful. And it's because
Yeah.
we said, "Ooh, I'll never be like that." Right? We make these decisions in our head. "Ooh, look at that person doing that. I'm never going to do that." Right? But we really close ourselves off from the gift of really allowing ourselves to be possible, to be everything. Right? To be all those
Yes,
words that we never wanted to be called. We all have the propensity. And once I think you can own that, right, as Debbie Forrest says, we can all be everything at any point in time. And that's a hard concept sometimes, I think, to wrap your mind around, is owning all that
it is.
and being
It
okay with it.
is. It is something you said earlier, which I'm not remembering in this moment, but it reminded me that, the relationship is really inside ourselves. And that can be a hard pill to swallow. You know,
Yeah. That's where it
people
all,
want to, and I worked with, like I said, many 15 years of working with couples. And the most common thing, and again, there's no blame or shame for this, it's what we've all done. And what happens is it's very easy to look outside of ourselves and say it's your fault, or you're doing this, you need to do something differently so that I feel better. I certainly did that in my marriage, for sure.
right. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but really, it's the internal relationship with our parts and our shadows and
Yeah.
ourselves.
It so
Yeah.
is, but that's the kiss of death in relationships, right? You need to change this so I can feel better. Wait a second. That is so
Yes.
backwards. We need to
Mhm.
feel better first and then come to relationship as our best self, right? It's like you got to go do your work first and figure out what makes you happy because if you're, that whole that whole you complete me thing, is a bunch of
Mhm.
BS, right? Like we had a song because I was in a band for a long time with one of my best friends, and we would just crack up. And she had this song one time where we'd go back and forth, and it was a song about the wrong girl, and that whole line about "you complete me." Like, wait a second, no, no, I complete me. I complete me. I complete. That's you don't have
Yes.
that kind of responsibility. Think about it, you're giving all your power away. If somebody has that kind of power over you, that whatever based on what they do, you're gonna feel good or bad, that's a lot of power to give away, you know?
It certainly is. It certainly is.
And
Yeah,
so it the
it
the
is.
the
And it's
riddle
such a
is
setup for disappointment.
every single time because you're expecting somebody to complete you. And that's not ever going to happen. So
Right.
what advice would you give them instead? We're not expecting people to complete you. So how do we complete ourselves? Living in this
Such a good question.
living in this externally faced world where we're taught to look outside of ourselves for everything. You want to feel better? Buy this product, buy that. So this stuff has been implanted in our brains for so long. And it's really, finding the moment of the quiet, right?
Absolutely. I was just gonna say it's at some point, I think people come to a place where they're like, okay, all the things I've been doing, or a lot of the things I've been doing are not working, including looking out, 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 out. And you could spend a lot of time saying there's not enough of this, there's not enough good people, blah, blah, blah. It's all happening outside. But ultimately that doesn't get you anywhere.
Mm,
And so, or any of us anywhere. And
mhm.
so at that point, the invitation is to look inside and then really look, at your own vulnerabilities, your fears, the places you feel safe, the places you don't feel safe, how you feel about yourself, how you feel about what you deserve in your life, how you're validating or not validating your own requirements and your desires. There's such an opportunity to know yourself so deeply. The intimacy is with ourselves. So to know ourselves so intimately and deeply and bring that into connection is such a gift to yourself and also to the person who is present to receive, or the people that are present to
Mhm.
receive. And it's courageous work. Come back to love is courageous work. And I honor anybody who steps into it in whatever form that
Yeah,
that you do.
that
But
is
that's
so
really what it
beautiful.
takes. It takes a pause,
Mhm.
and it takes, like I said, when I was in my 20s, I kept dating people and then hurting them in some way, and dating the next person, hurting them. I was hurting myself, but I was also watching sort of the impact. And I just, oh my goodness, I have to pause. I have to pause to stop this train and get off of it. And
Mm,
then once you get off that train, there is a like, okay, so who am I? And why am I doing this? And something needs to change. And
mm,
then there's an opportunity to open up to different paths to support you on that journey. But that pause and the breath and the witness and
mm,
curiosity. Yes, I had frustration and,
mhm.
so,
Yeah.
but I was also very curious. Why am I doing this? And it's really unkind. So let me please stop doing those unkind things.
That is so just having that self-awareness. I love the pause, right? Like, because we really don't in this day and age, again, we're taught to just go, 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 busy, busy, busy. We don't spend the time to pause, whether that's a big aha pause because you're down on your knees and you have to, or
Mhm,
intentionally pausing, building a pause
mhm,
into your day. Um, really helps everything else just, you know, get into the flow when you can
mhm,
really have a deliberate practice. I always love to teach people that. Have a deliberate practice every
mhm.
morning before the stuff hits the fan. Because let's face it, it's gonna, right? It's gonna hit
Yes.
the fan. And let's have a proactive thing that we've already done that expands that space within us to give us more capacity to handle and have that space, like you said, the pause between here's what happened and that stimulus response thing. How am I going to react? Am I going to do my knee jerk reaction, or am I going to choose a response, right? And it's really
Yes.
building that into our lives, which is what you were doing. Wait a second, I don't like this. Hold on, time out. I'm going to pause and
Mhm.
just introspect and take a little look at what's going on. And I feel like that's so hard for so many people.
It is. It is. And especially like you said, in our culture that's going 90 miles an hour. And, t- I have a guru that I connect with from time to time. And he says 3 breaths in the morning before you get out of bed. If that's the only bit of consciousness and pause you have in your day, that's awesome.
Yeah, we'll take
Start,
it.
start small. Yeah.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, I tell people to when you wake up, it starts up in the bed before you even get out of the bed, right? It
Yeah.
starts right way up there when you realize that you're awake. Just think about what do you appreciate, and it can be something so small. Oh, the air conditioning, or I have this pillow that I really love. that I got from my chiropractor. I'm like, I love this pillow. I could just go on and on about the pillow. So who cares what it is? Find one thing. And
Mhm.
yeah, I love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And take those 3
Yeah.
breaths. All right. We're going to pause for a second here, everybody, because it's so appropriate. So go take your 3 breaths and come on back, and we'll be right back with Robyn. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Look for the Good. This is a fascinating, incredible conversation we're having with Robyn Vogel. And we're talking about coming back to love. And one of the things, we talked about so many great things. And I just love where this is leading us, this real self awareness that we're talking about, and owning stuff that we do and deciding that we want to do something about it. And there's a little kind of a mantra. I love asking people what their personal mantras are, but there's a little thing that I always keep in my head, and it's that I'm 100% responsible for what's going on in my life. And I love that for a lot of reasons, but I love it because it gets me out of victim mode, which is kind of what we were talking about before, blaming the partner, blaming somebody else, blaming the circumstances, because then we don't have to do anything about it. But when we can say that I'm 100% responsible for what's going on in my life, I mean, of course, there's things out of our control. But if we are co-creating our lives with the universe, I don't know, that makes me feel a sense of relaxation. My anxiety goes down when I hear that. How about you?
Mm. Yes, for me as well. And it can be a hard pill to swallow. I always say that. I always say that after I invite that truth into the space. I say, I know that's a hard pill to swallow. Because it is, because it, like I said earlier, it can be easier, and it's a little bit of our default training to blame other people and other circumstances. And it's a tall order to step into the sort of spiritual realm and spiritual perspective and take on the belief that we actually create our own realities.
Yeah.
It's a very empowered space to be. And I can say that when I first heard those words 20 years ago, I was, having a temper tantrum about that because I was in a question like, well, if I create my own reality, then why did I create this? And why did I create that? And why,
Yes.
and there's a much bigger answer. And what that led me to eventually was to really see that my soul is here on a journey,
Mhm.
and that I honor and respect that, the journey. And my soul's journey included some really, really painful, scary losses.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, I have grown tremendously in so many ways, in depth, like inside my own being of vulnerability and healing, and like as a spiritual being with spiritual awareness. And so, like, I'm so grateful for those experiences, despite how painful they were. And that wasn't something that just, overnight I was like, oh yeah, I create my own reality and decided like my mother was going to die when I was 10,
Right.
like,
Right.
no,
No, it doesn't work like
no,
that.
no, it doesn't work like that. And I do believe that my soul made a choice to come here, have certain experiences because of the evolution that my soul committed to and also desires in this lifetime. And taking it a little bit more down to the earth for a moment, we also can, if what we focus on, we can create more of, then we can look at it that way too. Like, we create our own
Mhm.
realities. Do you want more money in your life? Do you want a partner in your life? Do you want a new home? Whatever it is. Do you want a
Yeah.
vacation? That's, and
Yes.
how
Yes, I
can
do.
we, yes, 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 I will receive. Yeah. So there's that piece that's very exciting, you know?
Yeah, and I love that because here's the second that I would say, the and to that. We get what we focus on, whether we want it or not. So that's the piece I feel like people aren't always aware of. Well,
Yes.
they're focusing on the wrong end of the stick. They're focusing on the lack. They think they're talking about what they want more of, but they're really complaining about what they don't have. And sometimes it's a subtle shift for people, but it makes all the difference to what you're trying to attract, because if you keep talking about what you don't have, guess what you keep getting more of?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And the universe will just keep bringing in that lesson until we get the message.
Yeah.
Okay. Focus on the positive, focus on the gratitude, focus on what we want, desire, require in our lives is the language
Yeah.
I like to use, desire and require.
Ooh, I like that together.
And yeah, want and need have all these different energies that feel quite heavy
Yucky.
to me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's got
Yeah,
that
that
yucky feel.
desire. It's like, ooh, desire.
Mm.
What
And
do
then
I
require,
desire?
right? I
And
love
then what
both
do
of
I
them.
require? Yeah, because
Yeah.
there's things that we require. We require many things, and some we require things to feel safe
Hmm.
in our lives and in relationship, and those are really important.
Really important. I love that. And it makes me think about this saying that Tony Robbins says a lot is life is always happening for us, not to us.
Hmm.
And the to
Yes,
us mentality
yes,
is the why is this happening sort of a thing, right? It's because there is no good answer there. It's taking a look at yourself and looking inside and asking better questions. That's what we've been doing. You've been talking a lot about the questions, right? And that's one of the things I
yes,
talk about in my book is when you ask yourself better questions. Why? Because the brain always has to come up with an answer. Again, that's the way the brain's programmed. It's always going to give you an answer. So if you're asking a crappy question, it's going to give you a crappy answer. When you start to level up your question asking and really get in that curious mindset, I wonder what else could be possible here. I
yes.
wonder, right? I wonder what my responsibility is in this, right? Like asking yourself those really honest questions, but stuff that makes you pull your lens back and take a bigger picture of the landscape of what's going on, especially in relationship. It's so easy because we get so triggered and the emotions get so high. Um, to
Yes,
ask ourselves, what's
yes.
my part of this?
You just said one of my favorite questions, so I want to
I did.
emphasize it. Yes, one of my favorite questions, I have a couple, but one
Uh-huh.
is what else is possible? What else
Yeah.
is possible? Even when you're, like you said, you're kind of triggered and pushed to the edge, it takes a lot of consciousness to remember to ask questions. And in that moment, the question, what else is possible, allows you to sit back, take a breath, and be open to the awareness that will come in then, and actually getting out of the mind and opening up to more awareness that's greater than the mind. Because like you said, the mind likes to define, the mind likes logic, it likes to draw conclusions, and then we've got a narrowing. And instead, the question really opens up to the expansion of the universe and the infinite space and the infinite being that we truly are. There's a million answers to those questions. So, what else is possible is a great question when we can remember it. And the other is, what would it take? Fill in the blank.
Mm.
So, you're in an argument, you're kind of at a, lockstep, like, we don't know what to do here. Well, what would it take to move from X to Y? What would it take to feel less angry? What would it take to feel less hurt? What would it take for us to shift this? And I want to emphasize, though, that it's not about finding the answer in the moment, because again, the mind likes to lock onto things,
Hmm.
but to ask the question and step back and see what shows up. See what shows up in your dream that night. See what shows up tomorrow, later in the day, next week, next month, because we don't know when the awareness is going to be dropped in.
Mm,
So,
that's
yeah, I
beautiful.
love
Right
those.
back to the
I'm all
pause.
about
Oh,
questions.
I love
Yeah.
that. I love that too.
Yeah.
And it's always right back to that pause, right? You can ask the question and then pause on it. Um, and it's huge. And we talked about sticky notes and in front of me, I remind myself of the questions, like you said, if you can remember, because when we're in that stressed, we're in that back brain, we're not pulling up good questions.
Mm.
That's when you need the pause, right? And it's okay to
Yes.
take a break if you're in the middle of a conversation with somebody it's not going well. It's okay to take that break, get yourself back together, and then reconvene when you can get in
Yes.
that expansive mindset.
Yes. Yes. And the sticky note reminders, I'm all about them as well. I put the questions on the sticky notes and I put them on the windowsill and next to my bed. And yes, it's a
Yep.
great way to remind myself.
Me too. I love that. And it's like the little mantras too, like up in my room, you'll
Mhm.
see my favorite mantra. And I'm gonna ask you what your favorite mantra is. I'll share mine. Mine is things are always working out for me.
Mm. Ah,
You
that's
like that?
beautiful. Yes. 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 It's
And
true.
it is true, but we forget. We forget.
Yes.
And
Yeah. It's all
look,
about reminding ourselves.
it really is. And having little places, use your phone too. I have things that pop up on my phone during the day,
Mm.
little reminders. Um, use your technology and you can use it in a spiritual way. You can use it in a way that supports you and reminds you of what is most
Mhm.
important and what your intention is. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's your favorite
Yes.
little mantra?
Well, my favorite mantra is maybe obvious because my business is called Come Back to Love. And that's my favorite mantra. It's a little
Mm,
tagline, no matter what, love no matter what, come back to love no matter what.
I
Because it
love that.
really is, for me, it's all about that. There's you know, we could use lots of our energy to feel resentful and angry and guilty, and God knows I could, feel grief at any moment with all the losses.
Yes.
And it's okay when I do. I'm okay with it. And I want to have that grief and come back to love. And especially with everything happening in the world, when we do the work of loving ourselves and coming back to our hearts and really feeling that impacts other people. It ripples out. Some say it impacts 350,000 people, let's say. Let's say that's true. That's amazing.
Wow.
Why wouldn't you come back to love and impact 350,000 people in the world? When
Yeah.
right now, like, that's, in my, humble opinion, like, yes to more love
Yes to
in the
more
world.
love. I say yes to more
Yeah.
love. And here's the one little thing, because we're gonna have to wrap soon. I can't believe this went by so
Mm.
fast. Coming back to love and that whole theory and that whole mindset. And here's the thing that's like kind of the kicker, that I say to my kids a lot. When somebody appears to deserve love the least is usually the person that needs love the most, right?
Absolutely.
And
100%.
and that can really shift your mindset when you think about it, especially with kids, when you're raising kids, when that kid is just outrageously badly behaved is when they need love the most.
Yeah. Part of my practice has been, and that I bring to the groups that I lead, is to send love to the person that you feel deserves it the least. And that's a steep invitation. I get it. And I get that that is what's required. At least that's how I feel about myself. And I invite that others to do the same.
That's absolutely beautiful. I love that. I've loved this whole we could talk for another couple hours here because I love this topic so much. And you know what's so cool is that Robyn and I are both going to be at the Natural Living Expo in
Yes.
Massachusetts. You've got to talk, right? You're one of the
Yes.
speakers. There's over 70 speakers.
Yes.
It is one of the most fun, incredible weekends. It's the whole weekend long. It's November 16th and 17th. It's going to be at the Best Western Royal Plaza in Marlborough. And come there. Robyn has a talk. What day are you talking on, Saturday or Sunday?
I'm talking Saturday morning, 9:30 a.m. So come
Nice.
early.
Yeah,
Yeah.
be there, be square.
Yes.
That's a great way to kick the expo off is with your talk. I love that. And then
Yes.
I'm speaking on Sunday, I believe, before the keynote.
Yay.
And so we'll be there all weekend. We have booths. You can come and meet us in person. And Robyn and I are going
Yes.
to get to see each other too, which is so fun. So
Yeah.
be there or be square. And it's amazing. You can get a weekend admission ticket and go to any of these talks that you want. It's all included. Oh, and that delicious food court. So
Oh
good.
my goodness. Yes. Can't wait.
So good. So this has been an incredible conversation. I love the work that you're doing to have people come back to love. Thank you for doing all that amazing work.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you so much. This has been just such a treasure. I'm so grateful.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming on. I'm equally as grateful. It's been so beautiful having you here, and thank you for sharing your heart with us today. And remember, everybody, it is never too late to live your best story. Be well.
Thanks for tuning in to Look for the Good with your host, Carrie Rowan, best-selling author and mindset coach. Join us every Monday at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. right here at Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. If you weren't able to catch an episode, no worries. Just visit our website to find all the archived episodes of Look for the Good on demand so you don't miss a thing. And remember, it's never too late to live your best story. For additional resources or to find out about how you can work with Carrie directly, visit carrierowan.com for more details.